Today I'm going to show you my attempt at painting Nora, the sole survivor from Fallout Wasteland Warfare, right after this. Hey everybody, Sam here from the Tabletop Hub, your one-stop shop for all things tabletop, and we're back painting some more Fallout Wasteland Warfare today. Now this may be the last starter set miniature before we start diving into the add-ons and expansions, so what I wanted to do was put together a paint scheme that was quick, simple, and would look good on the tabletop for Nora. So let's get stuck in. First off, I actually wanted to start with the base. I knew I wanted to do a bit of dry brushing and didn't want to get any of that on the actual body of the model. So since this is the PVC starter set, the base and model are already sealed together. So first off, I took some Army Painter's dark stone and quickly and messily covered the majority of the base. Once this was dried, I then dry brushed some Army Painter's Dungeon Grey onto the stones before adding a final dry brush highlight layer with Army Painter's Uniform Grey. Then we were on to the main bulk of the model. So first off, I took Army Painter's Deep Blue and began painting the Vault Tech overalls. Now in the interest of speed here, you don't need to be overly careful because we'll be painting over the other areas that you get a little bit messy with later on, so feel free to take a decent sized brush like you see me doing here and just make sure you get a nice even coating over the model. Once this was dried, I got some Army Painter's Leather Brown and painted the knee pads and shoulder pads that Nora is wearing. I then took Army Painter's Oak Brown and painted the wrist guards, the wood of the rifle on Nora's back, the wooden planks on the base, and also the belt and shoulder strap. The main reason I used a different colour here was simply so that there'd be a bit of variety on the model itself. Next, I took Army Painter's Army Green and painted the little pouches on Nora's belt. I felt like these would likely be something that have been scavenged from a military checkpoint or something similar, so I wanted to give it a kind of khaki camo look. I also used Army Green to paint the body of the Pip-Boy. For the skin, I used Citadel's Kislev flesh, and this was really the main part of the miniature that I'm unhappy with. When the PVC starter set shipped, there was what was known as melting Nora face. Basically, for whatever reason, the detail on Nora's face weren't really very well defined, and as such, it's hard for the wash, and for me, even as the painter, to decipher where everything is and to highlight it accordingly and effectively, but we shall trip her on regardless. Speaking of washes, I used 3 of them on Nora. First of all, I got some Drakenhof Nightshade from Citadel and applied that to all of the blue areas of the Vault Tech overall. I then took Nuln Oil and added that to all of the knee guard, shoulder guards, and basically all of the armour. And finally, I added Reichland Flesh Shade to the skin. Like I said, all of the washes are from Citadel's range of washes, and in fact you can get a great selection of them in a little box set that they do, and I would highly recommend it. Next, it was on to the highlighting. Now, this is something I'm not great at, I'll be honest with you, and I think if you've been part of the channel, you will know that I say this every video, but I'm trying to get better. Basically, every model I do now, I force myself to do some form of highlighting or edge highlighting, because if I don't practice, I won't get any better at it. One of the biggest things I found with highlighting is that you've got to have conviction with it. After the first brush stroke, when you highlight, you can be left thinking, oh crap, what have I done? But if you persevere, I found that it can be worth it. At the end of the day, we're here to learn, so we need to take risks. With that said, I began highlighting the leather armour with Army Painter's Munster Brown and just went around picking out edges and areas for highlighting there. For the areas of leather armour that I'd painted oak brown though, I highlighted those with leather brown. And then came the scary bit. For the Vault Tech overalls, I started highlighting using Army Painter's Electric Blue. Now the paint was very runny, and it could just be that I just didn't shake it enough, but I applied this to the main parts of Nora's legs at the front of the model, the tops of her arms, the tops of her shoulders, and the top of her butt. And once it dries, it really just raises those areas a little, and I think it acts as a nice subtle highlight that I was pretty happy with. One thing that kind of worked out as a little bit of a cheat is that I probably could have put on a couple more layers of the electric blue, but because it was so runny, it kind of acted as its own kind of glaze slash wet blend slash thing. Kind of made it look like I'd done a better job with it, I think, than I actually had. But there you go. The final touch is to add the dash of yellow to the Vault 111 logo and to the trim on the front of Nora's overalls, and to do this I just use Citadel's Flash Gits Yellow, which is a paint I've just picked up to paint some beautiful orcs from Shadespire. And folks, there you have it, a relatively simple paint scheme for Nora from Fallout Wasteland Warfare. Now this is a finished product I'm relatively happy with. I just wish I could have perfected the face a little more. I think that's the one thing about this model that I'm not over the moon about, really. There are more painting guides on the way now that I'm back in a permanent workspace, so keep your eyes peeled for those. But in the meantime, thank you so much for taking time out of your day here on my channel. If you're new to tabletop gaming, feel free to subscribe. The Tabletop Hub is a community dedicated to people just like you. But until next time, have a great week, and I will of course speak to you all soon.